Hello, and welcome to the Fat Squirrel Speaks. Today is Friday, September 25th, and this, I think, is episode 280. Thanks for coming to visit today. We're not at the kitchen table. The kiddo is doing the schooling from the kitchen table. So we're in the front room, which is also the workroom, but it feels kind of cozy right now. There's not a lot of light, but you know, the angle of the sun is changing and whatnots. So, yeah, thanks for coming over. I really appreciate it. You know, it's weird that you might come to my house but not know who I am, but just in case, I'm Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry, FatSQRRL on Instagram. Oh my goodness, y'all. This week's episode will have quiltingy, sewingy, crafties, and quilties. It will have knitting. It will have a little bit of shop talk. Actually, I'll just do that right now because it's right here. So right now we're kind of fall bags are out. I'm so thankful for everybody who shops the shop. fatsquirrelfibers.com. It's greatly appreciated. What I want to really do right now is just work on maybe like our the first Friday of November. I will have an update. That is a faux show. The first Friday of November will be like a winter holiday update. I don't really want to think about winter right now because I'm very much enjoying my fall. But I know that lots of folks like to have their things, right after the Halloween so they can transition, they can work on their gifts and they can get in that kind of cozy spirit. And so I will have lots of those in the first Friday of November, 9 p.m. Eastern, almost always. I do not think I will have another update before then, but if needs must, I might. For real, y'all. So I just want to give you a heads up that if I do have another update, it will be probably October 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern, fatsquirrelfibers.com. So those are kind of my plans at this point. So pencil me in for October 16th, but pin me in for November 6th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay? Thanks. Okay, and then what will you see? So you'll see winter. If I get that October 16th in, one of the reasons I want to is because I have some things I really want to work on. If you have liked my Cantha bag, which I love, it's this beautiful overstitching with like an embroidery floss weight. If you've thought, oh, maybe I'd like one like that. I have some beautiful. I have the black, and then I also have some teal with these like great pinks and goldy greens and blues, and so there's that. And then I also have a great gray that I really so that's probably what you're gonna see October 16th if I can make it happen. The other thing that I want to work on is I have these beautiful warp and weft wovens. I have another one that's like this, that's kind of more of this colorway with an orange in it. I bought these immediately when they came out, and I have been sitting because the fabric is so beautiful. Like the texture of it is so beautiful that I want to work with it. I want to make something for you with it. But like if I make bags with it, it's not going to really highlight the beauty of it. So I'm kind of like teetering on this one. So either I thought maybe to do like an unlined like drawstring type bag. I might do something like that, which is outside my normal range, but This fabric is just so lovely. I hate my traditional bags are interfaced if they're not like a decorator weight fabric. And I just don't want to interface this fabric. I'm going to play a little bit with quilting it to see if I like that, because maybe that will just like enhance the texture of it. So that's one thing I'm going to play with in the next week, in the coming week, is to play with that a little bit. But if not, maybe they will be like a drawstring option. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just see. But they are so lovely. I mean, like this white is actually like threads that are on there. This has like a pink with like the gold threads. Right? What is even happening? Oh my gosh. I saw somebody had sewn, I think it's a pattern from the Friday Company, but it's like this, totally not like what I would think I would make. But this like kind of tiered, very gathered roughly kind of dress. Like I think it's like a 3 or 4 tier. And they made it with this and it was so gorgeous. So anyway, I don't know. That's what I'm planning on. Like that's what's in my thinking place. Like I usually have a place like in front of me where I work, where I'm putting the things I'm trying to think about in the near future, like projects that I need to work on or just like things I need to work out, are in that. Oh my gosh, look at this transition that just happened. Are in like the thinking, like the physical thinking space of my workspace. But then let's talk about the mental thinking space of my workspace. Did you see? Like that was a transition that just organically happened. So fancy. So that's shops. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. There are just like random people walking outside on my sidewalk, which is kind of unusual, and they keep going back and forth. So I'm a little bit like, what's happening out there? I don't know what's happening. But anyway. So let's talk about my brain thinking space. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this, I should have actually just brought all of the notes I've been keeping these last 2 weeks to show you just how ridiculous they are. There's writing all over my work table, which by the way totally stresses my husband out, which I think is so funny. But like I have a sewing tape, like my machine's a commercial machine, so it's in a table, which by the way is just the way to go. Like if your machine is flush with the table around it, I had no idea that was so amazing. People said it was amazing. It's amazing. But it's like this white, I don't know, Formica-y kind of thing. I don't know. But it's really good for taking notes on. I don't write exactly where I'm sewing, but there's a large workspace adjacent to that so that I can take notes. So there's like all these like weird scrawled things that I've thought of through the week, along with like peanut butter. Like, don't forget you need peanut butter. And then like there's just like random, like my pattern for like one of the hats that is kind of hibernating right now is like it gets a dense front and back page of piece of paper of like actual pattern, but somehow like it's the only thing that's paper that's near me at night, and so it's like got pencil scrawls all over it. Because one of the things I actually really I appreciate lots of things about having a podcast. One of the things that I feel really appreciative about is that as an introvert, like I don't always have to try to organize my thoughts because I'm not always communicating them to other people. Do you know what I mean? So it's like very easy to slip into like a pushing things aside, especially as a maker. Like I often do not let myself be in a place of silence in terms of either just like what's going into my brain or what I'm working on. Or like I often don't work in silence. Like I almost always have an audiobook going. And so that's definitely like my defense mechanism against like saving myself from too much thought. I say too much. Like that's not the thing. It's just like it's too much in my own brain, you know. Sorry, I just knocked our table. I hope your coffee's okay. Or your tea. Whatever you want is fine. I have both options. So especially now when, like, even though I don't have a lot of social interaction with like close peers, close friends, but especially now when we're distancing and just not interacting as much in general, and when there is so much to process, there's always a lot to process, but even more to process in the moment. And so I do appreciate that, because I know you're going to come to visit, I know we're going to talk a little bit, that it does encourage me to actually sit with some thoughts for more than just 10 seconds, so that I can talk to you about what I've been thinking about and what's been going on with me. So thank you. I really appreciate that about our visits. Yeah. So let me try to talk about some of the chaotic, crazy notes. Yeah. Okay, first, canning. It has been verified by multiple sources in our show notes, which that's a real human being who likes this show. So that's a great human being right there. That it is encouraged to let fruit, be it tomatoes or apples or what have you. Okay, those are just the two that I know about. It is encouraged to let those sit and to let those starches sugar up before you preserve them. In fact, somebody said that her grandmother, I want to say she's an Italian grandmother, but I might just be making that up. I apologize if I have remembered that incorrectly. But she said that she would like let her tomatoes go to the point of just like almost being not okay anymore, before she can, to give her the most flavor, the most sugars that our bodies like to taste. There's other things, but sugar's is the only thing. Like, I want to say riboflavins, but that's not correct. Riboflavins is a weird word that often comes to mind when I really mean anything that's sciencey. I don't know what happened. There must have been like some sort of food pyramid campaign of the 80s that somehow put the word riboflavins in my brain, a Centrum commercial. I don't know what happened, but it is always right there, ready to just come out. And really, I should research what the riboflavins actually are instead of just like going with this like vague thing that's in my head, but whatever. Apples as well. So we're still sitting on our apples. I think I'm going to go for pie filling today. I'm feeling ambitious. Thank you for your recommendations. I think I'm going to try the Sure-Gel or the Insta-Gel or whatever it is. No, not Insta. That's bad. Don't use that. That's the one that like they use in commercial kitchens to like gel up their gravies and sauces and stuff. But it's not good for canning because it breaks down at high temperatures. Maybe they don't use it for sauces. Sauces? Oh my goodness. Maybe they use it for like that strange textured lemon filling of a donut. Something like that, I'm thinking. That's what it is. Anyway. So I'm going to try that. I'm excited to see how it goes. It's an experiment this year. So that's the canning. Okay, frog and toe we're talking about later. Finishing a frog and toe we're going to talk about later. Somebody had specifically asked me, okay, this is a weird turn. This is no transition. This is not a clever transition. Somebody asked me to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, and I've read so many beautiful things, and so many really just beautiful reflections on the Jewish holidays and like how her passing weaves into tradition for some folks, and that's been a really, like, I'm really thankful that people will share their sacred, you know what I mean? Like I'm so thankful for that, to see like how they're enfolding this grieving process for her with their tradition or with what they're doing, whether or not, I mean, whatever tradition that might be. And I know a lot of people are really grieving about her passing. But I don't, this, I don't feel grief for her passing. I mean, I don't even know the place to have grief for her passing, in that, like, her potential was so filled. I mean, maybe it wasn't completely filled, but to my eyes, like, she did so many amazing things and was so powerful and was looked up to by so many, and had such a full experience that I I don't have grief for her passing. So I understand that a lot of folks do, and and I am happy to hold space for that grief and how you're feeling, and to for my small voice to validate that grief that you're feeling. It's actually Saturday morning, hence my gorgeousness, right? Right? So pretty. But I just wanted to come back. I realized after I edited yesterday afternoon that I didn't complete my thought. And that is that I think that I don't have grief in my heart over Justice Ginsburg's passing, because it is eclipsed by gratitude for the overwhelming amount of work that her life brought to us. Like, that her just dedication and her brilliance made so much impact on so many lives. And I am just so thankful, just so deeply thankful for that. And it's helped me to reflect on other women in my life whose circles of influence were certainly way, significantly smaller, but whose work has impacted me and continues to impact me as I go forward. And I'm collectively grateful for their presence in my life and in our world. Which kind of brings me into the next thought, is that, and so I also wonder, like, if I don't have grief around her passing because there's so much grief that we are collectively feeling right now, and that brings me to I watched a documentary this week. It's New York Times Presents. It was available on Hulu. I'm not sure where else it is available. But they have, I think there's 4 episodes now about different current news stories. But the 3rd episode, which I believe aired September 5th, so it doesn't have the most recent information, is on the killing of Breonna Taylor in Louisville. And Louisville is very close to us. It's one of our neighboring cities. And so I found the documentary to be quite helpful in that I think when you're living through an unfolding news story, information is given that was incorrect, and you're just given little bits, and it's these tiny bits amongst other things, and so I found it so helpful to have an actual cohesive presentation of that material. And it had a little bit of information not only on her killing and the events surrounding her killing, but just a tiny bit of information about Louisville and their policing tactics. They employ something similar to like a stop and frisk, except with traffic violations. And that dovetailed into Trevor Noah's most recent presentation about the Breonna Taylor case and the lack of indictments surrounding her killing. And I am so thankful for him and his team. They have they have presented, it's not even that they're just presenting the news, but they have presented such thought pieces, right, that go beyond. They have, the news is there, but the ability that he and his team have to distill information, distill thought in such a compassionate and deeply thoughtful way is, and sometimes with humor, but sometimes not, and they know how somehow to navigate that, and I'm so thankful. But his most recent presentation, where he talked about how there's no winner. There's certainly no winner for her family. There's no winner for the Black folks of Louisville or Black folks in our country. There's no winner for the police, because again, now the police are trying to do this job where they're rightfully afraid, and they've lost the trust of the people in their community, not over this one act, but certainly. It feels like one of those situations that we are trying so hard to hold something together that we need to have the courage to allow to fall apart, from my perspective. And it's terrifying to let go. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you have that tense, like you're holding this vessel, and it's the only thing you know, and it feels like maybe if you just try hard enough, maybe you can just keep it together. But it's not serving its purpose. It's not serving its purpose. And we just need to be in a place where we can imagine what it looks like to not have that broken vessel anymore, and to make a new vessel that will serve us all. Anyway, his presentation, the presentation by the Daily Show of information on police brutality bonds, like the actual just literal financial black and white cost of the work that our police are doing. And, you know, how as taxpayers, that's not coming out of the policing budget. That's coming out of the budget of schools, and it's coming out of the budget of public health. And we are paying interest because there is such a thing as a police brutality bond. And that we as taxpayers are paying interest on these acts that are inhumane, unjust, and ultimately benefit no one. And, oh my goodness. So I am very thankful for both of those things at this time. And then I'll talk about the other thing that has been helping, or that's been holding space in my thought patterns now. Is that PBS has a 3-part series called Hacking Your Mind. And it's very much, it's like, for example, I believe the first episode is Us versus Them. It's an exploration of how we're in a place of such, it's an attempt to explore why we're in this place of such divisiveness, like why we are in this. Sorry, it's Friday at 11. It's just the warning siren. Everything's fine. But it attempts to explore that. Like, what is the root of this us versus them mentality? Like, how is it actually like part of our cognitive makeup? Like that, and especially now that as we're overwhelmed with so much information, that kicks in even more, because it is like reflexive. It's just like, you know, the doctor hits your knee with the little triangle-y thing and your body reflexes. It's a thought reflex. It's a way for us to quickly make sense of lots of information, and it's also a way for us to really misinterpret a lot of information. like grossly misinterpret a lot of information that if we were given, if we were in a place to absorb it in a more organic manner, like in a more organic way, in a one-on-one way, in a small community way, that our brains would not resort necessarily to this us versus them. That one has been, I haven't even made it through all of the 3 parts because it has been, I think I need to watch like 17 times. It kind of ties back into the book I read a while ago called 10 Reasons to Delete Your Social Media Accounts Right Now by, I can't even remember my handwriting. I think it's Jason Lanier, but I could be wrong. But it talks about not only the us versus them in terms of just like our normal cognitive makeup, but how that is such a tool that companies can use to manipulate our thought processes, and how very easy it is for them to do that, and how very, very profitable it is. So in his book, he talks about, like if Facebook doesn't have, like if they're not selling something necessarily. I mean, I don't know what this whole marketplace, I don't even know how that works. So I'm not talking about that, but like, Facebook is not selling widgets to you. So if a company is not producing something, is not selling you a direct service, then their product is actually you. Like, you are what they are making. Your buying habits are what they are making. Your consumption habits, whether that is intellectual information or product or whatever, like I am their product. And so this hacking your brain, or hacking your mind, series on PBS definitely zippers in with those thoughts. And it is, I'm not going to lie to you, it has been a really heavy place to think about. There's been a lot of, maybe we should head for the hills, and maybe we should just communicate. Maybe I should only communicate to you via zines and email newsletters, or maybe just mail newsletters, maybe full on like 1987 Christmas newsletters. Like, this is what we did in June. We had a great harvest, and it was amazing. And we learned some things. We made some errors, but it's been it's definitely been a place of a lot of reflection, just on my own behaviors and my own need to align myself with this virtual us, because that's what a lot talks about. Like, wherever you are, whether it's us, my sports team, whether it's us, knitters, whether it's us, white folks, whether it's us, poor folks, whether it's us, like whatever the us is, and there are lots of us's that many of us identify with, but how, what is my place in identifying myself with this righteous us, this us that I have aligned myself with, so therefore must be the correct us. And like, how easy it is, how lazy the brain is, and that it wants to do that, and like why it wants to do it, and what is my place in that? Like, what is my place in identifying with an us? It talks about, like, if everything is us versus them, like how that is a democracy killer. Because if us is virtuous and right, and them is wrong and wackadoodle, then there can be no compromise. And it's been a really powerful tool for reflection, and I wish we could talk about it. But maybe I don't wish we could talk about it, because that would be really exhausting too. but I wish we could talk you and I wish we could talk about it. By the way, I just had to mention this because this zine thing is really killing me right now. I just got these little zines. There's just 2 of them I bought from Etsy, and I'm not kidding you. I'm like, we're just talking in zines now. That's all I'm doing. If you can't make it to the table, we're just going to communicate these. Like, look at how amazing this is. I need to learn to drawer. But this is like Over the Fence Field Guide. This is by Saul Lewis, who is on Etsy. And it's just this amazing like map of a family member's farm and like some drawings of the animals and like this. It's just this very small thing, but it is so like concrete and lovely and comforting. And also it's folded really fun because it's just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with this like mouthy mouth cut in it. And that makes it so that you can make it a book. And that is amazing. Also, it's a little bit of witchcraft because now I can't make it back into the book. Okay, I got it. Everybody needs a little bit of witchcraft in their day. I figured it out. Some of you were like clutching some pearls. I just, you know, everybody needs some magic lady power in their day. How about that? If the witchcraft clutches your pearls. So anyway, those are 2 things that I have found. I have so many more notes, but I think those are for me. I don't think those are necessary for us to talk about. That's me trying to sort out. That is the other challenge of having a podcast. It's like trying to define a line between what is us and what is me. Mine is very fuzzy. So I think that is me. We're just going to let that be me. But those are 2 things that I have found to be powerful. Again, the New York Times, it's available on Hulu. As far as I know, it's available to anybody on Hulu. The New York Times Presents, it's episode 3. And then on PBS, Hacking Your Mind, it's a 3-part, 55-minute. But I'm not finished yet, because boy. So, okay, so let's talk about some sewing. Want to talk about some sewing? Let's do it. Okay. So, I don't even know where to start. It's crazy, y'all. So one thing that I have made this week that it's not completely finished because it's like a block away. Because actually with quilting that makes a big difference. I have sewn this little pod, and it is the Love from Beth storage pod. It's a $9 pattern if you buy it a PDF version on Etsy. It is available, in hard copy from like your local store. Maybe not your local store. So I made this with some like Charlie Harper fat quarters that I think I have hoarded for like, I'm gonna say like 10 years, 9 years. It is the first collection. And, it's a block away, right? And like quilting does do an amazing thing when you wash it. Like it shrinks up and it gets crinkly and like it becomes more dimensionally interesting. Right now I'm not super happy at all. I did not enjoy making it. It was a fiddlier thing than I am happy with in terms of like my own sewing. Like, I don't know that it's not the best way to do it. It very well like if it was a knitting pattern, I'd be like, well, this is not the best way to do it. As a sewing pattern, I don't even know. And you're like, dude, you sew for a living. Yeah, but I sew like one thing for a living. I'm basically a machine. So I don't know that this is like not the best way to do it, but I did not enjoy making it. However, the picture is so cute. I'm hoping that like, and I love that it's like rounded and like fat. I'm into fat things. I don't know if you've It's like rounded. It has this like wonderful belly, which I really appreciate. And again, maybe it'll be magic. And when I wash it, I'll be like, oh yeah, I totally love that. But right now I don't. But we'll see. I'll tell you next time how I feel about it. So yeah, like at this point, like I totally, before I made that, I was just like playing around with this fat quarter that I really liked. And just like exploring the texture, because I just really enjoy the texture of quilting on just like plain fabrics even, or relatively plain fabrics. So this is just like a fat quarter that I just messed with, and like I folded it in on itself and like stitched it here and like made a little hanger, and it's not been washed, by the way. It's been used, but it hasn't been washed. I should probably wash it. You're so judgy. Why is there a sewing needle in it? Did I think I was going to do something useful? So it's just all machine quilted. Like I just like was tucking it, and like, you know, like we would like do for a dress form or something. I was just like, oh yeah, I think I like it like that. I'll just put it right there. And so, yeah, we'll see which one I like when it's completed. Just like folding it on itself to look like a good size. Because I don't know about you, but like my normal life organization is not, but like the business part of my life is like overwhelming. Like the need for organization is overwhelming. So like at this point, like my little IKEA caddy, you know, like everybody's got the 3-shelf caddy from IKEA. It looks like I'm like going to the Thunderdome or something. Like it's just got stuff like sticky hooks all over it. There's like scissors hanging everywhere and rulers, pods. It's just insane. Okay, maybe the Thunderdome was a bit of a stretch, but you know, I was just talking about like how those cars have got like all this stuff on them. It's kind of like that. Right? So like that was part of the reason I was like, let's sew random storage pods. Like I'm all about the vertical organization. I don't know what Gus is looking at, but he's looking at something. Anywho. Okay, so there's that. And then also, like in my quest to cover every flat surface of my house with a quilt that is also seasonal. I am like such a person who does not have seasonal decorations, or at least I haven't. But the thought of like a quilt being seasonal is like, oh, that's a flat pack. Like you can go crazy. You can make as many of those as you want because they pack away to nothing, right? So I bought this little cheater print, and I don't know what line it is. I'll try to remember to put that in my show notes. Something like, I'm looking over there because I also have a layer cake of it, just for full disclosure. But that I'm gonna make my dining room table fall quilt with. That's right. But I'm out of control. Evidently Googling fall cheater print is definitely not going to get me what I need, because it's just showing me cheetah prints, which is not the same thing. Anyway, it's just a little cheater print, so I thought I would use it just for my little side table. So it's quilted, it's backed with some cheap IKEA fabric. It's got the binding on it, and it's sewn down, but I need to stitch the back of it. I need to tack the back down. I can't believe I'm a person who likes hand tacking built binding. Who am I? It's not even like I'm like, ooh, I really like the way the finished product looks. No, I just really enjoy doing it. It's very restful. Who am I? I don't know. I mean, I'm not kidding. When I did like the first few quilting things I did, and my mom told me that she hand tacks her binding, I was like, you're crazy. I was like, this is not an heirloom. It's for my table. What are you talking about?
Now I'm all like, yeah, I'm going to hand tack a cheater print. It's just a cheater. Well, if you don't know what a cheater print means, it just means that this is printed on this fabric. This is not pieced. This is just one piece of fabric that has a design printed on it that kind of looks like a quilt. So yeah, I totally dig it though. So I gotta tack that and then wash it, and I'll show you that next time. And then, I know we're still talking about sewing, y'all. I got an update done, so I was able to catch up on some other projects. Like, I don't ever do sewing really when I'm working. That's not right. I don't do a lot of sewing projects when I'm also doing sewing for the shop, because it always feels like, oh, I should be sewing for the shop, not for just like personal stuff. And it also is like a factor of like how long I can sit at a sewing machine without my back being like, stop it. Stop it. And I also don't sew in the evenings because it's like loud and, well, I just don't enjoy it. But so, last time I talked, I was making Annie's puff quilt. Annie is my dog. She's my older dog. She's going to be 10 at the beginning of next year. She's an Aquarius. I don't know what her rising is. So I told her I was going to make her a puff quilt because she gets cold. She has hair. She's a Schnauzer poodle. And her hair is very straight and non-insulative. And so I think she gets cold. But she doesn't like to wear clothes. So I'm making her this quilt, which I'm sure she is going to not like because I like it. Yeah, you know how it is. So I'm making... So it's not done, but the top is essentially done. You make these little squares that have like just a backing. I'll tell you why they have this on there in a minute. And then you sew them together. You don't stuff them all and then sew them all together because it would be just like very difficult to sew through all that, but whatever. I'll try to remember to put a link in my show notes. If you just go to YouTube and YouTube'll, instead of Google, YouTube'll ombre puff quilt, you'll get tutorials. Or just puff quilt, you'll get tutorials. Although I do like to call it a biscuit quilt because biscuits are good. And that's another name for them. But so anyway, Tova laid out the color scheme for me, which I very much appreciated because that felt very fiddly. I didn't like that. And then, yeah, isn't it cute? By the way, this quilt is, what did I say? It's less than a quarter of a regular bed quilt, like a full size bed quilt. And it doesn't even have its batting or its backing, and it already weighs almost 3 pounds. So like this is the OG weighted blanket if you are feeling it. I think it would also be like a furnace if you've slept under this. So if you live in the far north, it's an option. But isn't it cute? It's really not fiddly at all. I mean, if you, I will, okay, full disclosure, I have a commercial sewing machine and it's a straight line machine, so it has good power. So there, especially with it being flannel, there are areas that you have like 6 layers of fabric that you're going through. Okay, even more than that, because there's that. Well, no, that's still only 6, I think. That's 8. Okay, so there's areas where there is a lot of fabric that you're going through. So like, I definitely suggest a heavier needle, like a jeans needle. So I don't know how, but lots of people have made them. So I'm assuming it's fine to make just on your, do you know what I mean? Anyway, it is super fun though. The nice thing about it too is that it's a very easy project to you can just sew a puff here and there. Like, because when you sew them up, you sew them on 3 sides, and then later you sew like a row together, and then you stuff them all. So the like sewing the puffs part, which I think would be the most time consuming part, you can totally do just in little segments. Like I just had a bunch of the bases cut, and I bought the charm pack for the tops, so they were already cut. I didn't even have to cut them. And then you just sew the 3 sides up and throw them in a bin. And I like that. Like it's something that kind of just you can do here and there, especially if you have little people or you're working from home or whatever. Now, I did not use the correct color thread because my machine is almost always threaded just with like an off-white. And so like you might see as I'm holding stuff up, you might see my stitches, but Annie doesn't care. And I knew that it would just be easier for me to just sew them up as I went. So anyway, it was very enjoyable. Then, after I got done, I realized that my first puffs were not as stuffed as my later puffs because I think I was like nervous about sewing things together. So what I did is I just went back, cut little slits in the backing fabric, stuffed them some more, and then just cut little pieces of fusible interfacing and just seamed up. Now, this quilt is going to have a layer of batting, which it doesn't need, by the way, but I just am going to do it because I'm crazy, and a backing. So I would not normally trust this interfacing to stay on there like through multiple washes for a pet bed, but I feel pretty much okay with a layer of batting and a backing that it'll be okay. So yeah. So that's what I did. I just slit them open, stuffed some more in there because it's just like a little snip. You can use just like a pencil or a chopstick or whatever to put some more stuffing in there. So you don't need a very big opening at all. And then I just used, and I was a little bit concerned because I was like, I've never ironed polyfill, but it seemed to be fine. Didn't seem like anything was catching on fire or melting. So yeah. I don't know if you can tell how lovely it is, but it's really lovely. So yeah, there's more process to be done, but I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been laying on this table for me because I need to. Oh, and then if you want to, you can quilt it like you would quilt a quilt. Like obviously you're not gonna sew through the puffs. You're gonna sew through the valleys or whatever. But I think what I'm gonna do is. I haven't completely decided. I'm going to see how much of a pain it is. I think I'm going to just do a tie quilt. Just tie it to join the interfacing and the backing. Because that seems less crazy, but it might be more crazy. I can't decide. But because like I didn't iron seams open or anything like that, like I'm afraid if I try to stitch through that, it's going to be kind of a pain. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how much of a pain it is to hand stitch through it. That may make my decision happen. Okay, that's all the sewing content. Let's talk about knitting. Oh my gosh, do you want to date? It's wool season. So the young kids have like norm core, they have the cottage core. There's frog core. Did you know that was a thing? They have the goblin core, but we are wool core. And so when the wool season happens, when the wool season comes upon us, I get a little bit crazy. And I want to do all of the wooling. I want to I've had like this intense needle felting urge, just like that comes upon me in the fall. I don't know what it is. It's the needle felting season apparently. So I'm going to do some of that, but I don't have anything to show you yet. But here's some knitting. Okay. I told you I'd finish. I finished my Stephen West Botanic shawl. I cannot figure out what side is what. Let me just have a minute. Just shush. This is the side. This is the top line. So it is knit with hand spun and Knit Picks Chroma in the Seahorse colorway. I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. It's pretty humongo. I am 5. Okay, I used to think I was 5'7.5", but apparently I'm only 5'6". Anyway, I'm 5'6", and it's longer than my wingspan, and it covers my butt when I have it around and I have a very long torso and a very big butt. Anyway, this is quite gigantic. And I didn't even full disclosure, I didn't even do as many rows as I should have at the end. I have to steam out my points. Oops. I'm so lazy, y'all. But like, I wash it, by the way, Tuft Woolens, vetiver and cedarwood, my favorite. But I just hung it on the line to dry, and so it's got points from the clothespins. But if you just hit those with a little steam, they usually go right away. But anyway, so I was supposed to do like another 3 rows here, or 3 repeats, but I was just done. It's done. So yeah, but I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. Right? It was a very mindless knit. Like, it is definitely TV watching knitting. If you ever see another human again that you can knit with, it would be good for that. But very enjoyable. Highly recommend. It is, I used pretty much all of my chroma, 2 skeins of chroma, which are 100 grams. I had kind of gone through part of, like, I did my first skein, and then to find where because it's a long color change, to find where that matched up, I had to kind of take a little ball out of the second skein. But then I ended up using it in the bind off, because in the bind off it didn't really seem to matter if it was, you know what I mean? Like, the color gradation wasn't as visual to me as it was in the body of the shawl. So I used almost the complete 200 grams. And then I have, definitely have some hand spun left that I have been making crochet granny squares with, just held double. But there was a lot of that. So yeah. Okay. Okay. What else do we have? Oh, I got this out. So Olga Jazzy Knits, I don't know why I have so much trouble. I had cast on her pattern a bit ago. She has a shawl called Koro Koro. It looks like this. And her work is one of those things that looks just amazing in person. Not that it doesn't look amazing in photographs, but it's in person, it's outstanding. I took a class with her at Super Summer Knit Together and was just blown away by her samples. She's an excellent designer with such a unique approach to textures that still feel fun to knit. She's, maybe not for beginner knitters, but even adventurous beginner, I would say, because this texture doesn't involve some shaping, because it's so to clarify, that is a triangular shawl. I decided that I wanted that texture, but I only had 2 skeins of DK in the colors that I wanted to use, so I decided to make a cowl. So I used the same texture pattern, but just in a long skinny rectangle, for like an infinity cowl. And this is Hedgehog Fibers DK in Film Noir and something else. I don't remember. Yeah, who knows? But like, this texture it just involves some slip stitches basically, and garter, or excuse me, reverse stockinette and stockinette. Like, it is not. But like, look at that effect. That is a great effect. So again, and this is not the first pattern I've knit of hers, and I also, taking her class, worked on several of her textures, and they are all very intuitive and potato chippy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh, I just want to finish this next, like this one. Oh, I just want to finish this next chunk so that I can get to the slips going this way instead of this way. And so from the things I have worked on, they all kind of have that feeling to them, which is very enjoyable. And she's also a lovely human being. So yeah, I got that out. So I knit about this. It was like at that stage where I was like, I felt like I was knitting on it and nothing was happening. But it's probably because I was like knitting 4 rows. But so I just got it out the night before last, and like, this was my little stitch marker for my wool husband. Thank you for making me a wool husband. So this was very, just like an evening and a half. So yeah, and that's like not constant knitting, but right, so enjoyable. So I don't have much left. but I'm just going to knit until I run out. And I did do a provisional cast on, so I'll do some sort of grafting to close it up. We'll just see what happens. And then the last thing, thank you so much for your lovely response to Frog and Toad. Right. Frog and Toad. That's a pattern by Frog and Cast, which you can find on their website, which I can't remember if I put the actual website in the show notes. It's hard, whatever. YouTube show notes are weird. No. But anyway. So last time I showed you Frog. This time I can show you a finished Toad. And let's see. Oh, I finished Frog's pants. They're not blocked yet, but they are knit. See, like the texture is like a 2x1 rib, so they almost kind of have like a corduroy feel to them. This is Bartlett yarns, sorry. And then I decided, okay, so I really thought about, okay, well, I've started his cardie, which is in some Jamison and Smith. He's going to have an orange cardie, but it's like a burnt orange. Okay, so I really went back and forth on Toad's swimming costume, and I just wasn't sure because I just want a very fall Frog and Toad. I mean, like, I understand the beauty of the swimming costume story. So don't get me wrong. But I decided that instead of a bathing costume, I would make him overalls so that he can be in the garden and working on his harvesting. Sorry, I'm putting his overalls on him, so I'm trying to just stall, but I'm not very good at it. It is not super, it's not super easy to dress a toad. That's just, I mean, I think you would understand that. I think he understands it. Especially because I did not have the tiniest button in the universe to make like a button closure for his house. So this is Barrett wool. This is her Wisconsin fingering. It's like a woolen spun fingering weight. So it's his bathing costume is a very overalls reminiscent. So I just kind of went a little extra and like did some moss stitch, just decreased a cast off for his little waist. Then I just did some decreases in the front. I just did a little bit of decreases and then just did I-cord straps that I just grafted together in the back. Because hi. So yeah. So things I did a little bit differently on him is that in the pattern they have you cut to do the eyes, like you the little white parts of the eye you do first, and then you kind of like make an eye socket for him, and you do a little bit of cutting and then picking stitches and then cutting. On Toad, I picked the stitches like I was supposed to, like picked them up, but I didn't cut. And it makes the eye a little bit rounder. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it kind of sticks up more. So I don't think I would do that. I mean, I'm not against it. This is done like it's written. And Toad, I did not cut the stitches. So I think it made the eye kind of sit up more. Because it wasn't as relaxed an opening, it was tighter. like the eye socket. I think next time what I might do is do like an afterthought eye socket. Like put in a waist yarn. But I don't know. Who knows? What will I do next time? Because will there be a next time? Yes, there will be. Gonna knit another pair of them. I did like doing the afterthought arms. I did enjoy that. The pattern has to do like a traditional like just work back and forth and then pick up stitches for the arms. So I just did like 4 stitches where I put in like a ripcord essentially. Like have you done it? Laura Lenneman has a pattern for Afterthought Heel Socks where she talks about how to knit in a waist yarn that you then go, and she didn't invent this idea, I don't think. Maybe she did invent it. I don't even know anymore. Everything's a blur. But whatever. It's a great reference point if you've never done this technique before. You knit in a waist yarn, and then you go and you pick up stitches on either side of that waist yarn. The pattern is free. You pull out the waist yarn, and then you have live stitches to work from, but you don't have to cut anything. Now, in a sock, I now prefer to cut my yarn, but this is such a, well, there's no cutting on the armpit, but that's what I use for that. But on the eyeball, it's just like, it's so scary because there's only 4 stitches. And so, like, you cut it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this could just, like, especially if I was doing a super washy wool, I would be nervous. I was a little nervous anyway. And it's not because I don't like to cut my knitting, because I don't mind it at all. But yeah, okay, that's just me talking too much. Welcome to the show. He's cute. Now, I did not, these are knit in such a way that you could totally wet block them because you don't have to stuff them until the very end. But what I did was I just steamed my guys. Mostly because the first one I didn't do like the pattern told me to. I could not actually wet felt him because I wouldn't have been able to stuff him correctly. So what I do is I have this heat resistant glove. It's like a barbecue glove or something. I used it for dyeing. I use it for dyeing and for washing wool. This is actually a great investment to have if you're like a capital W wool person. Also, it just looks great, quite frankly. It looks like you're doing serious science in your kitchen. But this is a heat resistant glove. It's really great if you're dyeing anything, if you're washing a fleece and you need to use really hot water. It makes it so much easier to get in and do what you need to do. And again, I think they're just like, I think they're marketed like as barbecue gloves or whatever. They're very handy. So what I did is I just held my little frog, my little toad, in my protected hand. And then I just steamed him. I actually just used my iron steam function, which my iron has a very excellent steam function. But I just steamed him with my iron to kind of bloom out his stitches a little bit. And I'm pleased with him. So I don't know, maybe next time I'll wet felt. But I mean, the great thing about wet felting is you could like flatten out his little flippers a little bit better. You probably do a little bit extra with his hands if you wet felted him. So there's good reason to. I just didn't. But yeah, so just steamed him all up. And also it looks fun because you're high. It's great. So somebody asked me if I felt the pattern was worth it, because the pattern is $15, if I'm not mistaken, US dollars. I do think it's worth it because I would not want to try to figure out how to do this on myself. I mean, look at his little body. Come on. Look at his little body. It's easy to understand. The directions for the clothing are a little strange, I will not lie. Like the pants, I just kind of went with the cast on, like I went with the stitch counts and just kind of winged it. Because there's this kind of unusual technique of like, if I'm not mistaken, you would do a provisional cast on like here-ish and then knit, which I felt like was kind of unusual. It's just, that was a weird way for me to say that. I didn't want to do that. So I just looked at the pattern to see what the stitch count was for the legs, and then I just cast on the legs and knit them up. And so now I am knitting this sweater as is indicated because I couldn't figure, my brain couldn't like figure out how to do it another way. So I'm just going to do that as they suggest. So I'll report back next time. And like the overalls, or the swimming costume, excuse me, the bathing costume, the provisional cast on and then you knit down and then you pick up and do the top, which is just so unusual. So I didn't do that either. I just cast on for the bottom. I just knit it from the bottom up. But I'm doing the sweater the way I'm supposed to. So I'll report back. That's just unusual. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just like, that is strange. So that is something to be aware of. But I mean, quite frankly, like you get 2 stuffies, and yes, they are very similar to one another. Like one of them is just essentially like shorter proportions, but whatever. You get 2 stuffies, a pair of pants, a cardigan, and a bathing costume for $15. And like, I think that's totally fair, especially since like every sewing pattern ever is like $35. Right? And like, you know, like Mr. West will have a shawl pattern, which I'm not saying that his are not, but like it might only be like a page and a half that's $8. So, I mean, I feel like it's fair. Okay. I feel like it's fair. That is what I said, but that is also what I mean. For me, it was totally worth $15. Hi. Totally worth it. Did anybody ask? Somebody asked me if they're fiddly. Yes, of course they are. I mean, that is like, I never know how to answer that question because toys are just inherently a little fiddly. Like, they need to have a separate, like, okay, so like when I go on Goodreads to report that I have finished my like cozy apple mystery, by the way, the next one in the series is called Golden Malicious. So like when I go in there to report that book, like, I'm like, this needs to have a different rating system than, what is an actual book that I just finished? I'll have to look. Actually, there is a decent book that I just finished, and I can't think of what it was. Oh, dang me. Why don't you get it? Oh, anyway. Oh, here we go. There we go. Come on, Goodreads. You're making me look even worse. Oh my goodness, I can't even. Oh, so The Changeling by Victor LaValle was an excellent book. And on Goodreads, its review is 3.79 stars. But Sour Apples, which is the book before Golden Malicious, it has a star rating of 3.91. Now, I really enjoyed Sour Apples, don't get me wrong. But it is no way comparable to The Changeling. Okay. I'm not a literature analyst, but you know what I mean? Like, they need to have a different rating. And so toys need to have a different rating than like shawls. So yes, it is fiddly. But is it, so like what I rate them on in my mind is is the tediousness worth it for me? And then but B, is it written as painlessly as possible? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's always going to be fiddly to work on small needles with small stitch circumferences. You're usually knitting at a really tight gauge so that you can get a good fabric that can be stuffed without the poly or the wool or whatever showing through. These are wool stuffed, but you know, whatever you decide to stuff them with. So like what I try to think about is like, so those are the main things. And so I don't think this was any more fiddly than it needed to be. There are little things that I did, like maybe not tweaking, like cutting the eye, or maybe not. The jury's still out on the whole like provisional cast on for the clothing. That jury is still out. But the pieces themselves, the toys themselves, I do not think they were written more fiddly than they needed to be. I think they were clearly written, like I knew what I was supposed to do at each step. So yeah, I got a great product from following the directions. This guy, I didn't follow directions. I stuffed them in the wrong order, but that was my fault because I thought I was being fancy. I was wrong. Things I did add some, I can't remember, but I suggest that you use like a heavy thing, like what are those, poly pellets, but just use rocks, just use rocks. You can use beans or rice if you're not going to wash them and you don't have mice anywhere near you, but if you do, don't. But like aquarium gravel is often used or whatever. Decorative tumbled stones, pennies, whatever. I do like that. It gives them a good weight, and I can't remember if they suggest that in the pattern, but so yeah, I do not think it was written any more fiddly than it needed to be, and I definitely think it was worth the product. It's very cute and also just enjoyable. Like, just take the joy you can get in 2020, y'all. And these little guys have been very enjoyable to work on. And it's also been enjoyable just to revisit Frog and Toad. And somebody on YouTube commented and gave me a link there's been some, like, I don't want to say, it's not Frog and Toad fan fiction, because it's not quite to that extreme level. But there's like Frog and Toad in quarantine and Frog and Toad re-entering the world, and it's very enjoyable. Okay, I think that's probably all we need to talk about. That's all I'm able to talk about right now. So did I... another tip trick. If you don't like to work your stuffies at a tight gauge, like if you're just like, I hate to knit at a tight gauge, I feel you. But one of the great things I learned from doing Susan B. Anderson's, I think the first time I did that technique was in her, I want to say like her fall charms, which I, by the way, totally need to knit some more of. I found a pumpkin and a blue pumpkin and another thing that I unearthed. And I really need to knit some more of those fall charms. And then also needle felt some gourds. Anyway, and mushrooms. Oh my gosh, it's too much to do. But one of the things she suggested in that pattern is that if you don't, like if you get your stuffy done and it looks a little bit like maybe polyfill's going to show through or just whatever, is to kind of like shock it, like to kind of essentially start the fulling process, to wash it in hot water and then dunk it in cold a couple of times, so it gives it an extra bloom, gets those fibers to interlock and mesh with each other, so that your stuffing isn't going to show through any little holes in your knitting. So that's always an enjoyable thing. But yeah, so I definitely recommend them. That's a lot of me talking. And I'm excited. I saw several folks are knitting them now, and I just want to see what y'all do with them. Yay! But yeah, he's still got overalls. He probably needs a pocket. Oh, of course he does. Who has overalls without a pocket? I'm sorry, Toad. I'm sorry, bud. Oh, somebody also suggested like making their little fingers magnety so they'll hold hands. Oh my gosh. They make those teensy little magnets now. You could totally do it. You could totally put them in there and they would hold hands. Anyway. I hope that you have a delicious apple this week. It's apple time. Well, okay. I'm in the north of the northern, well, not really the north of the northern hemisphere, but ish. So it's apple time for us. I hope you enjoy a seasonal fruit wherever you are. And I hope it's actually as good as you remember it being from last year. I hope you feel like the swelling of creativity, but that you're not overwhelmed by the need to fulfill that potential all the time. I'm struggling with that one right now. Oh, I hope so. Many things. But okay, I hope that you find the Halloween candy that you're looking for, and that it is also as delicious as you remember. I need a line on some Mary Janes. But maybe what I really need is a line on like a Mary Jane hack. Because like I want real peanut butter in it, not just like the tiniest little bit of peanut butter, like a peanut buttery molassesy toffee. Yeah. I'll talk to you next time.